And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday. It is the best day of the week, and not just because the weekend is almost here, and it is also March Madness, but it's because it is the day the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show. My name is Jim Lakely. Welcome to the show. I'm the vice president of the Heartland Institute, which is an organization that's been around for 40 years and is known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. Heartland and this show brings you the data, the science, the truth that counters the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed every day of your life. And there is nothing quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere. So I hope you will be kind to this program and bring friends to view this live stream every single Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Also like, share, and subscribe and leave your comments under the video. These all convince YouTube's very mysterious algorithm to smile upon this program, and that gets it in front of even more people. And as a reminder, because big tech and the legacy media do not really approve of the way we cover climate and energy on this program because it counters the alarmist narrative, Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. We are working on reversing that, and it's still a work in progress. So if you want to support this program, and I really hope you do, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS, which stands for the Climate Realism Show. And you can support us and help make sure that this show keeps coming to you every single week. We also want to thank our streaming partners that help us promote the show. That's junkscience.com, CFACT, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and the CO2 Coalition. All of them are friends of ours, and we hope that you will check them out as well. Today we have with us a usual crew and a very, very packed show, so we're going to get right to it. But let me introduce the panel. Anthony Watts. He's senior fellow at the Heartland Institute and the publisher of the most influential climate website in the world, What's Up With That? We have H. Sterling Burnett. He's the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center on Climate and Environmental Policy at the Heartland Institute, and Linnea Lueken, research fellow for energy environment policy at Heartland. Welcome all, and this is going to be a really fun show.
Hey, hello. I wanted to mention to everybody, I'm sorry that we got started late today. I made everybody late because I had to go put a couple of crates of money from Big Oil in my vault.
That's right. The gold bars, they don't just come from the EPA and thrown off the Titanic. They're also delivered directly to Anthony Watts's secret bunker somewhere out west. All right.
Since I haven't got my cut, Anthony, it probably wasn't wise of you to disclose that you got that and we haven't got our share. But thanks.
Yeah, what's going on?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, we're coming to your house, Anthony, and you're buying the drinks. All right.
You're not denier-y enough.
Right. All right. Well, as I said, we have a very packed show. We have a lot of people here on our live stream on YouTube and Rumble, and you can leave your questions in the chat, and we will try to get to them at the end of the program. But let's get started with our favorite segment as we start every show, the crazy climate news of the week. Hit it, Andy. Thank you very much, Bill Nye. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is some crazy climate news, as in crazy good. This comes from the New Republic, a liberal left-leaning publication, so it is written in a very panicked attitude. So let me read through a little bit for you. Trump's FBI moves to criminally charge major climate groups. The Trump administration is targeting climate organizations that received a Biden-era grant. Reading from the story here. The FBI is moving to criminalize groups like Habitat for Humanity, for receiving grants from the Environmental Protection Agency under the Biden administration. Citibank revealed in a court filing Wednesday that it was told to freeze the group's bank accounts at the FBI's request. The reason? The FBI alleges that the groups are involved in, quote, possible criminal violations, including, quote, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Now, this is a story we've covered on this program for several of the last episodes, so a lot of you regular listeners will be familiar with it, and we'll dig into it a little bit deeper. Continuing from the story, the FBI has told Citibank that recipients of EPA climate grants are being considered as potentially liable for fraud. That is, the Trump administration wants to criminalize work on climate science and impacts, said Capitol hunters on their account on Wednesday on X. Quote, an incoming administration not only cancels federal grants, but declares recipients as criminals. All of these grantees applied under government calls for environmental work and were reviewed and accepted. Trump wants to jail them, unquote. Well, sounds pretty good to me, actually. Among those groups that applied for and are being investigated by Kash Patel's FBI are the Appalachian Community Capital Corporation, the Coalition for Green Capital, and the DC Green Bank, among others. Isn't that too bad? There's also another wrinkle to this story that we're going to get to in a minute. But Linnea, I want to start right here with you. Are you surprised by this move by Kash Patel's FBI? And is this, to be fair, the same kind of weaponization of government that we've seen over the last 8 years, but just maybe in the other direction?
Well, I don't know if I would say weaponization of government. But honestly, yeah, I am surprised. In the last Trump administration, the climate stuff really kind of snuck through a little bit, even though he was, pro-American energy independence and everything. A lot of Republicans got into this really bad habit of kind of towing the line a bit on the climate alarm stuff. So I am more than pleased to see our government actually considering taking action against people who are frankly these groups aren't just spreading, misinformation using government funds. They're actively and purposefully terrifying the public, all for a big power grab. So I'm not going to cry over it. I don't know. I haven't looked into it too deeply to determine whether or not I think it represents genuine, federal overreach, but I'm definitely not losing sleep over it.
All right.
I don't know. I'm concerned it might be a little politicization. Do you? It's not clear to me that every time you examine this type of behavior to determine whether fraud is going on, you should be announcing publicly, "Oh, we're going after them for fraud." No, it may not be fraud. You like Habitat for Humanity. Well, okay, they applied for a grant. Are they doing it to retrofit homes and stuff like that? If so, it falls under the Biden's guidelines for climate stuff. That's not fraud. That's not criminal. They applied for a grant to do what Biden says is climate related. We may disagree. We may think that we shouldn't be giving money for stuff like that. I certainly do, but I'm not sure that you hold, you release an announcement saying, we're looking at these people for criminal activity. I don't know.
I definitely don't know about like freezing Habitat for Humanity's bank accounts. I would say that seems strange, considering the context of what they're actually being investigated for, allegedly, but I don't know.
Well, it's not their bank account. It's the bank account at Citibank where, throwing the gold bars off the Titanic, as the outgoing EPA staffer for Biden had said, the $20 billion sitting there to be distributed with no accountability to groups that on their face didn't warrant such enormous sums being sent to them. So actually,
yeah. Well, I mean, President of Earth's group, Stacey Abrams' group, I definitely think that there had to have been some kind of fraud going on there, considering, it doesn't cost however many billions of dollars. She received $2 billion to put new appliances in people's homes. There is some pretty crazy overhead going on there. So that to me smells like fraud, but Yeah, I'm with Sterling on like, why are you running around announcing that you're doing it? It's kind of like some of the other stuff that they've been, broadcasting to the media before they actually get. I'm thinking of like the Epstein files or something. Like, stop doing that. Stop it.
Well,
You don't know what
stop
you're
getting our
getting.
hopes up, right? Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually Anthony, you can wait in here in just a sec. Just I want to read the related story from the Washington Free Beacon that's related to the whole climate grift that we've been covering on this show. So the Washington Free Beacon story is that a federal judge temporarily blocks Trump administration from reclaiming billion-dollar climate grants. A federal district court judge blocked the EPA's efforts to claw back $20 billion, which we mentioned, that the Biden administration awarded to just 8 climate nonprofit organizations. In her opinion Tuesday evening, Judge Tanya Chutkin, who seems to get every single case related to Trump and the administration, gotta say, and J6 people, she's from the U.S. District Court of the District of Columbia. She was appointed by Barack Obama, and she wrote that the Trump EPA had failed to submit evidence to support its termination of the billion-dollar grants. Her ruling, however, does not force federal disbursements to continue to the grant recipients. That allows the funds to remain frozen. The ruling is a temporary block on the EPA's termination of these grants and may be reversed via pending further court proceedings. Quote, EPA defendants vaguely reference, quote, multiple ongoing investigations into programmatic waste, fraud, and abuse and conflicts of interest, but offers no specific information about such investigations, factual support for the decision, or an individualized explanation for each plaintiff. This is insufficient. At this stage, EPA defendants have not provided, quote, the credible evidence required. Now, I think if you have opened up FBI cases going after these organizations, and we're talking about NGOs that were stood up in 2023 with, nominal amount of money in the bank, and then are suddenly granted billions of dollars to distribute without any accountability, and the entire NGO is staffed by high influential Democratic staffers from the Obama administration and the Biden administration. To me, that seems on its face worthy of investigation and worthy of freezing that $20 billion before it's wasted.
Well, I think the biggest problem that we have with all of this is that none of these things seem to have much accountability. I mean, they apply for a grant, they get thrown a million here, a billion there, whatever. And then what do they do with it? Okay, so all they have to do is write a report saying, we did X, Y, and Z with this money. But anybody can make that stuff up. I mean, you can say, I went out there and I made climate, fair for women and children and people of color or whatever, and there's no accountability. No one actually goes down to the level of finding out whether they actually did the work or not. They just look at these reports. No one ever leaves the office. And this is a problem I said with climate science from the very, very beginning. These guys that sit at NASA guests like Gavin Schmidt and Michael Mann and all these other people that are screaming about the disaster that's impending, they never get out of the office to go and look at how the data is being gathered. And when you point it out to them, they don't care because, we have to keep our grant gravy train running. I heard a great quote last week about the highest noise is the screeching brakes on a gravy train, Seriously, when the gravy train is slowing down, people start screeching, and then they say, "Oh, well, we were, properly vetted and all this other stuff." Well, the problem is the vetting process is lame. That's it.
Well, to be fair to these groups, they can't have issued reports yet. They haven't received any of the money, so they can't report on how they've spent the money that they haven't received. This is stopping money from going to groups. The groups that received money earlier, because this is not the first time they were throwing gold bricks off the Titanic, there you can get some reports and see whether the spending is justified. If you require them to keep normal accounting records and transactions, that's not clear. But simply applying for something and an administration giving you that grant, we're all suspicious of this stuff. It's just not clear to me. And I think it warrants an investigation. It's not clear to me. You brand them as criminals in the press and you tell the bank, these are cartels that we're going after. And so you need to freeze the funds. What you do is you say, freeze the funds in the background, and we're going to start our investigation. And if we find out there's fraud and abuse, then we announce it once we've got our indictments.
Yeah, well, every time we just scratch the surface a little bit on any of this stuff, we find, either they're manipulating data or they're affecting peer review or throwing money at crazy things. I mean, it just seems to me like deception and fraud and waste is rampant within the climate industry. And every time we look anything beyond, the surface, we find this stuff.
It's government. Deception, fraud, and waste is rife across government grants. It's not just climate. Medical funding, deception, fraud, and waste. Educational funding, deception, fraud, and waste. HUD funding, deception, fraud, and waste. It's not unique to climate. That's big government. Once big government gets in something and people get on the gravy train, multiple gravy trains, there's going to be a lot of deception, fraud, and waste. We can hope DOGE catches a lot of it. Now, I'd like to go back to something I think Jim raised. Why does this one judge keep catching all these cases? Well, it's not just one judge. There's the other judge that looks like Lurch that's hearing a lot of these cases. But it's common in legal matters for, if a judge has one case before them on a particular topic, them to combine, they say, okay, this is the judge with the expertise on this topic. We'll just keep throwing the cases that way. You can forum shop for courts. You can't necessarily forum shop for judges. And so it's not clear to me whether it's that suspicious. I think she got the first one, and she's getting everyone after that because it's in the same bailiwick.
I think maybe we should suggest to Schumer that he form his own alternate to DOGE, the Deception, Fraud, and Waste division of the government. That would be good, huh? He could rally more deception, fraud, and waste. Stand up there and shake his fist like he does.
Yeah.
It'll never work. It doesn't have a good acronym.
Yeah.
Oh,
all right.
I'm sure we'll come up with something. The comments will come up with something.
There you go.
Chat, get in there and come up with something fun. So
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. So we'll keep an eye on this. The professional climate grift has continued for decades, and this is the first real attempt to put a stop to it and have a good look at it. I mean, just the idea that Stacey Abrams' organization and these other things, they just set up, literally, they put a shingle out somewhere on K Street, and suddenly they have billions of dollars to distribute to quote unquote for climate justice and other programs that don't make any sense. I mean, Stacey Abrams herself, she went on MSNBC and said she deserved billions of your tax dollars because she supervised a pilot program in a small town in Georgia buying energy efficient appliances for people. And so they just exploded that into this $1 billion program out of nowhere. Now, that does not happen in the real world. It does not happen honestly. And we need to be pretty clear about that. And we are. All right, let's move on to our second or our third maybe item in our crazy climate news of the week. This was shared in the chat this week by Linnea, and this comes from Climate Change Dispatch. After only 15 years of operation, Germany's first offshore wind farm is being scrapped. The Alpha Ventus offshore wind farm near the German North Sea port of Borkum is set to be dismantled after being in operation for only 15 years. It has become too unprofitable to operate without massive subsidies. Alpha Ventus is noted as being Germany's first offshore wind farm. The pioneering wind farm was officially commissioned on April 27th, 2010. According to Blackout News, a decisive factor for dismantling the Pioneer project is the expiration of generous subsidies made possible through Germany's EEG Renewable Energies Feed-In Act. The subsidy meant that Alpha Ventus wind farm got 15.4 cents per kilowatt hour after being put in operation. Now that the subsidy has run out, the wind farm operators receive only the basic tariff of 3.9 cents per kilowatt hour, thus making the farm unprofitable. Anthony, can you explain this to me? And how it's a 15.4 cents per kilowatt hour with subsidies versus 3.9 cents per kilowatt hour without them. And how is wind power, which is all over the world, ever going to be profitable without subsidies?
It's not. The maintenance costs are astronomical, particularly for the ones that are out there in the ocean. Those offshore wind farms, they are in the worst environment known to man, saltwater. They've got saltwater corrosion to deal with, not just on the base and the nuts and bolts that hold the thing together, but also in the generating equipment and the electronics. And then you've got the underwater cables to get the power. And then you've got the blades and the gears and all this other stuff. My brother-in-law used to head up Cincinnati Gear Company, who made a bunch of transmissions and so forth for Navy ships. And then they decided, we got the bright idea, we're going to start providing transmissions for wind farms down at Tehachapi, in Southern California. So they provided a whole bunch of transmission systems, gearboxes for these wind farms down there. And guess what? No matter how good they engineered these things, they would shake themselves apart and fail. And they ended up with warranty claims that were off the charts. The company went bankrupt because of selling gearboxes to wind farms. So the bottom line is wind farms are never going to be profitable because the maintenance costs are so high and the return on the investment is so low. The only thing that keeps them going is these subsidies. When the subsidies roll out, well, people say, well, that was a nice idea, let's scrap it. And this has happened time and time again. If you go to the southern tip of the big island of Hawaii, you will see some of the earliest wind turbines placed there, from 25 to 30 years ago. It's just nothing but a scrap field now. The company didn't even bother to take them out because it was so unprofitable. Wind doesn't work, which is why the Dutch abandoned it to use generators and stuff a long time ago. It's just a pipe dream.
The Hawaii is very instructive because they are old, but they also closed very early due to corrosion and such. And now they sit there rotting as sort of fading corrosive temples to the wind gods. It's not clear that won't happen in Germany, offshore Germany as well. It may be too expensive to dismantle those things. As Jim knows, I covered this in Climate Change Weekly this week. This German report. It was interesting. They were getting 15. Look, I don't pay 15.9 cents per kilowatt hour for my electricity here in Texas from all sources. They were getting it just for this one thing on top of whatever the cost is to transmit it, whatever the cost everyone else is paying for other sources of electricity. So it's enormous subsidy. They still get 3.9 cents, and that's more than our wind manufacturer, our wind plants, industrial facilities get here. And it's not just in Germany where these things are closing early. In my paper, I looked at the fact that there's 2 in Australia that are closing years before their supposed useful life and decades before the useful life of a comparable, well, they're not really comparable because they're actually reliable, but a coal plant built to provide energy, or a nuclear plant built to provide energy, or a natural gas plant built to provide. They can last 30 and 50 years. These things are closing after 15 years, 20 years, 21 years. And it all has to do with they're not profitable without subsidies. They're falling apart, the high maintenance cost. The ones in Australia, they were coming up for relicensing. A Chinese company had bought them, and they said, we're not going to relicense them. The new turbines are much bigger, produce much more energy, but you have to go back in and pull out all the bases for the old ones because you need a much larger base. It's just, so they're just going to have these fields with concrete bases, even if they took the turbines down, which is not clear they will.
Since we're forced to do a lot of this stuff by mandate, by regulations and so forth, maybe we should change the term carbon footprint to carbon bootprint, where they do this to us and we have to pay extra high money for these electricity prices.
Carbon hobnail bootprint.
Yeah, government has a very big carbon bootprint. That is for sure. Yeah.
That
All
would be a
right.
good op-ed title.
You heard it
Hold
here
on to
first.
that one, Anthony.
Yep.
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right. Well, yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that. I mean, you see these things failing. Europe has scaled these things up or attempted to at a much faster pace than the United States, which is, from an American point of view, seems hard to believe, but it is true. And it was mentioned in the chat before the show even started that there was a huge fire at a transformer station in the UK, and it shut down Heathrow Airport. And they used to have diesel backup generators for that, but because they're going to net zero, which is the reason why people are putting these stupid windmills up everywhere, they couldn't get the power back on. So, net zero's failing. It's going to fail for sure. It's never going to happen. But it is instructive when it happens and disasters occur in real time when this stuff hasn't even been, really ramped up yet. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that as well. Thanks for mentioning that to people in the chat. Let's go to this next story. This is a little bit about corruption, I suppose. This is about an LNG report that got buried. You might recall that the Biden administration banned LNG exports because of the impact it would have on the environment and the release of greenhouse gases, if you care about that stuff. And we don't, and you shouldn't. But anyway, that's your background. Let's read a little bit from this story from the Daily Caller. House Oversight Committee sinks into key study, quote, intentionally buried by the Biden administration. The House Oversight and Accountability Committee is in possession of a key study on natural gas as of Wednesday that the Biden administration withheld in order to move forward with its 2024 crackdown on liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The Biden Department of Energy intentionally buried a final draft version of a study assessing impacts of LNG export growth in 2023 over worries that it would not support the rationale for the Biden administration's January 2024 decision to unilaterally freeze LNG export approvals, the Daily Caller News Foundation reported on Tuesday. I've actually, just reading that, I was reminded, I believe an auto pen was used for that freeze, because when the Speaker of the House went to talk to President Biden about that very action, Biden didn't remember it. So that even makes another wrinkle I didn't even think about. Prior to Wednesday's announcement, House Oversight and Accountability Committee had previously demanded that the Biden DOE provide the buried 2023 study, only alleged to exist until this week, for review, but Biden administration officials indicated that there was not a complete LNG study by 2023. That was actually a lie. Quote, here we'll finish up the story. Biden administration officials who religiously claimed to, quote unquote, follow the science, abandoned it to undermine American-made energy production, appease climate activists, and achieve their predetermined outcomes. As Secretary Granholm sought to weaken America's LNG industry, the Biden Department of Energy withheld key data from both the American people and Congress in order to push forward their radical environmental agenda. That is a quote from Representative James Comer, the committee's House Committee's chairman. So, Sterling, I don't know if we need to spend a lot of time on this. This is more of an information thing. I think we just want to kind of get it on the record. But and maybe it should be a real scandal that the Biden administration, shocker, was withholding inconvenient information in order to advance something that was not scientifically or economically necessary.
And that the press is not shouting this from the rooftops, front page stories, because I remember under Bush, under Trump, when a political appointee would make a little red line through one sentence, and they'd say, "Oh, they're suppressing the science. They're censoring science." Under Obama, the State Department twice, under Kerry and under Clinton, issued reports saying Keystone XL would be good for the country and wouldn't destroy the climate. It wasn't going to hurt the climate. And Obama twice said, well, we're not going to do that. We don't care what the science says here. Here, Biden, and so they didn't, despite the fact that it was a report from the State Department, they didn't officially sanction it. They didn't suppress it, but they said, no, we're not going to release it. Here, they had a report. They actually suppressed it, so no one knew it even existed. And they lied about the fact that they were suppressing it, saying they didn't have the knowledge as they moved forward. This is a real scandal. And yet, it's not a little red line going through a single sentence or taking out a paragraph. A whole report was suppressed, and I don't see the front page stories. I don't see the outrage that political appointees were interfering with the science. It's really sad, and it was destructive. Look, it shut it for months. It shut down new exports, new construction. Now Trump is reversing that as fast as he can, and we're happy for it. And guess who else is happy about it? The rest of the world, who's going to benefit from our LNG exports.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments on this topic from anyone in the group?
I mean, it's not surprising at all that they're burying information that they didn't want revealed. They bury all sorts of stuff, or best case scenario, they publish it and don't make any, media. What is it called? Oh my gosh, my brain is mashed potatoes today. They don't push it to the media at all. That part of the study came out, or that study came out. So, it's rather like, I guess, when the IPCC has their working group reports, and it's full of information talking about how most of the things that they are alarmist about with regards to climate change aren't happening. And that's all in the scientific reports. But then in the political report, they just leave all that out and, hype climate change as a catastrophe regardless. So it's all part of the grift. It's all in service of the grift.
Yeah, well, President Trump has promised to get, bring science back to EPA and the other, looking at the environment from a scientific way. And my gosh, if he was to ever hide a report that was inconvenient to his agenda, we might hear about it in the Washington Post and not have to depend on the Daily Caller, as Sterling has pointed out. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Sometimes we have a feature called Memes of the Week. We're going to pop up a couple here. Producer Andy, if you could bring those up for us, please. This is, it's been in the news that the radical lefties are, spread out across the country, setting fire to Teslas. And this is from our friends at the Babylon Bee. Democrats say fire at Tesla facility likely caused by climate change. Very good. That's the
indirectly. That's true. Indirectly, that's true. By the way, if we weren't fighting climate change, there probably wouldn't be something called Tesla, because we wouldn't have had all the subsidies for electric vehicles for all this time and all the support and all the mandates. So I guess indirectly that's true.
Yeah, I was pleased to hear recently that Elon said that he would like to see the subsidies for EVs go away. He said, I believe in my product and it'll stick around without them. And he said we need a level playing field. So that'll be interesting.
Well,
he'll still be selling his carbon credits.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
At this point, you'd probably be an idiot if you were a big company like that and you weren't doing that,
Yeah. Well, there aren't any Democrats out there vocally condemning basically the structures of their party, setting fire, trying to damage and destroy an American company that employs tens of thousands of Americans and produces a product that they were going to make mandatory like 30 seconds ago. So it's really
acts of domestic. They were all about going after domestic terrorists in the last administration. Now they don't see domestic terrorism at all. And you've got someone like the Hildebeest saying the Democrats should embrace China.
Yeah, the world's crazy. So anyway,
what's really pathetic about this is that we have been hearing now for 10 years that climate change is an existential threat. We've got to have electric cars, electric transportation, electric railways, wind turbines, all this other stuff, because we've got to save the planet from climate change. And the moment that Musk does something that does not endear him to the left, he says something they don't like or does something they don't like, they start burning his cars. So obviously, this was never about climate change in the first place. It was all about control. Listen to us, live our lifestyle, because we're right and you're wrong. That's all it's ever been.
You want to know something really funny I saw on X the other day? So there's an actor, like a minor TV actor who acts in shows for the CW named Misha Collins. And he used to have a Tesla, and he posted this big video about how he's gotten rid of his Tesla in exchange for a Toyota Hilux. And he did this whole video where he's like revving the Toyota Hilux in his driveway. And I'm like, careful with that halo,
Mark-
Misha. You know, it's gonna blind somebody. Like what? And to those of you who know Misha Collins, you get why that joke is funny on 2 points. But it's like, oh, so this really was never about climate change. You don't actually believe climate change is caused by, you know, personal choice to
Yes.
drive cars.
Senator Mark Kelly did the same thing, right? Space Cadet Mark Kelly, he bragged about having its Tesla, and he says, but now I don't like Elon, so I've gotten rid of it. And he showed the two vehicles he replaced it with. And they were big, gas guzzling SUVs. One made right here in Arlington, Texas. I'm very happy about that, selling those cars out of Arlington. But the point is, what he didn't replace it with was a Prius or a Chevy Bolt or anything like that. He went with really big, bulky, gas guzzling internal combustion engines, despite the fact that, you know, it's all about the climate when he bought his Tesla.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have a Toyota Hilux, but you know, here I am.
And the funny part of it is that, like, I think one of the first ones we saw, you know, take a video that Sheryl Crow took a video of herself with the Tesla on the back of a flatbed truck being taken away from her home, and it's like, yeah, I got you, Elon Musk. I'm getting rid of my Tesla, and he's like, terrific, I'm keeping your money.
Exactly, yes.
Now, I don't know what that's supposed to do.
We always talk about virtue signaling. In cases like this, would this be vice signaling because they're just being such hypocrites? You know, that they are embracing the vice of the internal combustion engine.
I guess.
Just asking. You know.
Hey man, muscle cars are cool again. Who knew? All right, let's go to our main topic today. Thanks for that, guys. Nice insights. But this is really a remarkable thing. Something that I certainly didn't expect this to happen, which is the possibility of an extinction event for mighty Greenpeace. This is we'll read here from the Washington Post. There's a lot to get to, I think, to fully explain the story. So have some patience, panel and audience. Story in the Washington Post: Greenpeace ordered to pay Dakota Access Pipeline operator $667 million in a case that could destroy the group. Greenpeace must pay the oil company that operates the Dakota Access Pipeline $667 million in damages for defaming it, a North Dakota jury decided on Wednesday. A massive financial blow to the group that environmentalists say could chill further advocacy. The case heard at the Morton County. That's right. The case heard at the Morton County Courthouse in Mandan, North Dakota, centered on Greenpeace's involvement in the protests over the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, which became a cultural flashpoint in the U.S. nearly 8 years ago. I know everybody on this show remembers that pretty well. The protest lasted for months, drawing thousands of people to a site in the middle of nowhere, Cannonball, North Dakota, near the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. Dallas-based Energy Transfer, which runs the nearly 1,200-mile pipeline that carries oil from the Bakken fields in the western of North Dakota to Illinois, accused Greenpeace of inciting the protests and encouraging violence to damage the company's reputation. By the way, the jury in this case took only 2 hours of deliberation to come to this decision and award enormous punitive damages. Continuing here, Greenpeace has said that the verdict in favor of Energy Transfer would be likely to mean the end of its 50-year-old affiliate in the United States, Greenpeace USA. In 2023, the most recent year for which the group's tax records were available, Greenpeace had roughly $40 million in revenue and 191 employees. Must be nice. Must be nice. And in fact, I read another story where Greenpeace USA did say that this would, a decision against them would force them to go bankrupt, and it would be an extinction event for them. Finishing up here, lawyers for the pipeline company also alleged that Greenpeace paid professional protesters, organized trainings for demonstrators, and sent them lockboxes so they could attach themselves to construction equipment. They also funded winter camps, if you remember, by the way. They initially sought $300 million in damages stemming from lost financing, public relations costs, and the 5-month delay in the pipeline's construction. Michael Gerard, director of the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law at Columbia, said the verdict was unlikely to stop activists from publicly opposing oil and gas drilling or picketing pipeline companies. Oh, well. But he'd said it could make environmentalists fearful of disrupting fossil fuel projects, pipelines, mines, and power plants as they are being built. Quote, it sends a chilling message to physical climate protests, anything that actually disrupts fossil fuel production, he said. Now, Sterling, I'll start with you. I know that you're a big you admire greatly these people that go out there in the streets and interrupt. And I know, the Just Stop Oil people, we have a ton of viewers and listeners from the UK. You guys love the Just Stop Oil folks. The same kind of tactics were used by Greenpeace here. This actually, in all seriousness, Sterling, this could really be a landmark case. And it seems to me that juries and the courts have had about enough of these sorts of tactics by the environmental left and are going to make them stop.
Well, I don't know if it'll make them stop until they all go extinct. It might make them temper how they do their protest. So people may not remember, but I saw pictures of after the protests were over, huge trash piles of these tents that they didn't know. They're environmentalists. Did they clean up after themselves like a normal camper would do? No. They left the trash everywhere. They even left the tents, the beds that they were sleeping in. Just huge trash piles that the state of North Dakota had to clean up at its own expense. They broke equipment. They damaged equipment. They cut locks. They did all sorts of things that aren't protests, that are vandalism, that are destructive. They say, oh, it's nonviolent. We didn't hurt anybody. No, that's not the only thing that violence is. If someone comes up and throws, firebombs my truck, that's violence, folks. If they pour sugar into my gas tank, that's violence. You have destroyed something. And so this may, if it's upheld, of course it will be appealed. If it's upheld, if this becomes a trend, it may actually stop some of these on-site blocking protests. There's nothing wrong with protest. In fact, it's a guaranteed civil right in the Constitution. You have the right to petition, the right to protest, the right to march. Now, that doesn't mean you have the right to shut down public streets or throw stuff through plate glass windows or burn things, but you have the right to shout. You have the right to say we won't buy your product, to boycott, to release your press releases saying why you hate these things, even to march outside of a headquarters. What you don't have the right to do is to destroy property, to go onto private property to protest. As it said, it was near the Standing Rock Reservation, wasn't on it. There's the trash. Look at that. Look at the trash heaps that they left behind. And these are people that care about the environment, they say. That doesn't look very caring to me.
Yeah. When I was at school at the University of Wyoming during this time, we had protests on our campus, and they gathered like probably, 200 people maybe, that they would, stand out in front of the student union and do their little signage and whatnot, picketing. And I remember there was this one day when they were all out there and they were shouting a bunch of nonsense through a microphone or a megaphone. And I just kind of like pivoted and looked across the field there at our engineering buildings and all of our science buildings, every single one of which was paid for by oil money at a land grant university. And they had all these signs that were like, divest University of Wyoming from oil, blah, blah, blah. Don't accept donations from oil companies, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, then there goes the school, I guess. We're just not going to have a university anymore because we're out here in the middle of nowhere getting to have this land grant university, basically on the backs of the petroleum industry. So that I always found that kind of chuckle worthy while I was out there. And of course we're nowhere near Standing Rock,
Right.
But it was still pretty funny. We had some very, very funny protests in general from those same people who organized that one. protested like Prager and stuff coming to campus. It was a great time. Really good year for protests.
Well,
They
that's
also would,
You know, I really would look forward. You know, I think seeing Greenpeace go the way of the dinosaurs. Now that's a climate extinction event we can all get behind.
There you go. You know, Greenpeace. I'm not one of those ones that says Greenpeace started out with noble intentions. You know, they were supposed to be against nuclear war and nuclear proliferation, but they quickly became about nuclear power. And then they became about any environmental scare, whatever raised them money. You know, they became a behemoth for a reason, a large organization that brings in a lot of money for a reason. They found new causes to raise money on. The thing that I guess I didn't touch on when I spoke earlier is that it's not necessarily the case that the protesters themselves were members of Greenpeace. The case was about Greenpeace fomenting this destruction,
right,
funding this destruction, training them for the destructive activities they did. And if you can stop groups from doing that, look, how many of those people would have been out there if Greenpeace hadn't sent them out there with tents in the middle of winter?
right.
Would they funded this whole thing out of their own pocketbook? Maybe some of them, but I'm not sure how many. So this could be a lesson, but we'll just have to, unfortunately, the courts are not done with this, so we'll have to see whether it stands.
This was the first time I've seen these videos of this, and I got to say, gosh, what a pigsty they left.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, it's awful. It was awful. They're out there saying they're saving the environment, and they're just they left trash everywhere. When I camp, when I go hunting, you know, we're careful to take out. I actually take out more than I leave. You know, I find if I'm hunting, I find other people's spent shells. I'll pick them up. If I see a couple of cans or some plastic bags or something that were left by earlier campers, I pick them up. When they abandoned it, they abandoned it.
Yeah.
That's like a lot of nice gear too. I don't know, like, who leaves their nice camping gear behind? That's just weird. It's always weird to me when protesters leave all their tents and stuff behind. I'm like, okay, well, clearly you were given this stuff,
Right.
because
They
you
didn't
wouldn't
buy it.
You know, you'd pack it out if you were, you know, bringing that stuff in yourself. So clearly they're being coordinated, and it's free, so they don't care.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, if I'd gotten those tents, even if they were given to me, I'd have.
Yeah, I'd be like, wow, cool, a teepee. I'm taking this home. You're not stopping me.
Yeah, I mean, we're good friends with Patrick Moore. He's the co-founder of Greenpeace. He's been a featured speaker at several of the Heartland Institute's international conferences on climate change. And we were not able to get in touch with him this week. He's probably on spring break like a lot of other people, but maybe we can have him on to talk about this. I really just do think it's remarkable that Greenpeace itself said that this could be a bankrupting and extinction event for them. And, you know, you saw they have annual revenues of $40 million. And there are probably, I would think it's safe to say, we've done a little bit of research on this, it's safe to say there are at least a dozen other quote unquote green groups out there at the level of Greenpeace that have annual budgets of that size or more. And that doesn't even include what we covered in the beginning of this podcast, which is all these pop-up NGOs that get billions of dollars of your money. How do you think organizations like Greenpeace and Sierra Club and all these other environmental groups on the left get their money? They get it through that NGO that just was invented yesterday and got $5 billion to distribute. And this way, they say they don't get government funding. Sometimes they proudly take government funding. I will say this, the Heartland Institute has been around for 40 years. We are a nonprofit organization, a 501c3 by the IRS, just like Greenpeace. In 4 decades, we've never taken a penny of public money, and including public money basically laundered through an NGO that is filled with former government employees. That's not how an actual nonprofit operates, because if you operate the way the Heartland Institute does, you have your integrity. You are transparent in the way that, you know, you're telling people where the money comes from. It's from people like you out there. And if you can contribute, we really appreciate it. Go to heartland.org. But, you know, all of this stuff is tied in. The reason that Greenpeace is so bold as to basically, they committed acts that had a jury award $300 million, $330 million in actual damages, and another $300 million in punitive damages, so that organizations like Greenpeace, and this is the reason why I brought up Patrick Moore, he has explained on many occasions that he left Greenpeace because he went to Greenpeace to stop nuclear war and the proliferation of nuclear weapons, and then that turned into nuclear power, and to save the whales. And after a few years, he realized all the people around him that came into that organization for that very noble purpose had all just turned on humanity. They became an anti-human organization. And they've grown and grown and grown this way. And this is the only time I can actually remember an organization that is so bold to use these tactics because they're so well funded. They never have to worry about fighting a lawsuit because they're just swimming in money. And now they've been held accountable by a jury to such an extent that the entire organization, at least in the United States, could disappear because they don't have the money to pay off this event. And, I know, Sterling, you said you didn't agree that this may be a tide turning of some sort, but it certainly is one of the rare instances where, the environmental left, you add to this Michael Mann trying to ruin the life of Mark Stein and Rand Simberg and CEI and National Review. And now, after 12 years of litigating in the courts, it's now, as we mentioned last week, it's Michael Mann who has to pay the money, not Mark Stein anymore.
I would say that this week we have reached a true climate tipping point.
This is the one that we need to have happen. Actually,
this is the kind of tipping point you want to see. I will say this. So Greenpeace, I don't know I know what their revenue is, but I don't know what they have in the bank. They usually have they built up a war chest. But even if Greenpeace USA goes under, remember there were two other organizations, Greenpeace International and Greenpeace, I forget what the third one is, like Greenpeace Banking or Financial or something. I don't know. They will survive. And of course, if Greenpeace goes under, they might be able to reorganize it. But look, it's a shot across the bow. It informs all these groups that that it's no longer not just a free lunch on corporate America. It's a subsidized lunch that you will be favored in the courts. We will take you as being public interest advocates at face value. And so your activities will be shielded from normal scrutiny. You say this is a civil protest, a nonviolent, the courts are no longer going to say, well, yeah, it got out of control, but it was largely for the good of humanity. So we're not going to hold you responsible. This says, you know what? The free lunch is over. You do certain things, you act certain ways, you hurt corporate America or you hurt individuals. My suspicion is that, individuals have been affected by these things a lot of times, maybe not this particular case, except maybe the workers. You might have to pay at least the attorney fees, and those can be quite high.
Anthony, you want to wrap this up for us?
This is the whole personification of the famous phrase, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Really.
Yep, 100%.
It's very, very stupid prize.
Yep, and it's maybe a sign that the maxim that the left's violence is speech and the right's speech is violence may also be coming to an end. So happy to see that. So, all right, thanks. I'm glad we got to cover that. We will keep an eye on it for updates in the future. Let's get on to questions and answers. Linnea, you're up.
Yep. I wanted to show off this comment from Steve Langdon, who said, Greenpeace, a complete scam that has done more harm than good, just like Center for Biological Diversity, the Humane Society of the US, Earth First, and their corrupt partners. And I was going to add to that and say, indeed, can this please happen to the Sierra Club? That couldn't happen to nicer people. And I also wanted to show off this helmet sticker that I have that I always have gotten a kick out of. Wait, there it is. Yeah. We like this one. Earth first. We'll drill the other planets later.
Drill one.
Nice.
Love that one. You're not supposed to put stickers on your hard hat, by the way, you guys. Don't do that for safety reasons. But okay. This question from Ted Clark. He says, "Hi, please address the relationship between the sun and climate." And Jim, I think you wanted to comment on this one.
Me? Oh, well, I mean, we want to have Willie Soon on the program soon. He's a very, very good friend, personal friend of all of it, everybody on this show. And he is probably the world's leading expert on the relationship of Earth's climate and sun's influence on it. So we hope to have him on soon.
Absolutely. So stay tuned for that one, you guys. We will try to get him. All right. DJ Bo asks, did anyone on the panel see Sabine H's video critical of the AGW attribution study? Thoughts? So to start with this one, I did not watch her actual video, but I saw some of her tweets about it. And she went on a nice little rant about how attribution studies in general are junk science, basically. Mm-hmm. And I was very impressed with that. Anthony, do you want to comment on this one?
Well, yeah, she went down that path. And she started criticizing this. I don't know if you've seen the latest or not, but all of a sudden she's backpedaling on that now. Saying, maybe I was a little too critical. Maybe I was hasty. Because she's been hit with a huge amount of peer pressure, basically saying, you're in the wrong and we're in the right because we're saving the planet, so shut up. Basically, that's the whole message that they've been pushing on her. And it's just really unfortunate, but it's a perfect demonstration of how the whole climate brigade is all about emotion and not about facts.
It's an example of the idea of live by social media, die by social media. Used to peer pressure was your actual peers, people that lived around you that you were going to have to interact with every day, that they didn't like what you were doing and they'd let you know it. And it's like, well, do you still want to hang out with these people? Now it's someone you've never met in your life is getting on your tweet stream and saying a bad thing about you. You go, oh, I don't want to be disliked. I want to keep my thousands of friends, my millions of followers, and you just cave, regardless of what you really believe.
Yeah, I didn't see that Sabina had pulled back from that, but I did see her original video criticizing. And it was actually pretty remarkable. And she was visibly angry. She says, the more I looked into this, the more I realized how much we were being lied to and how crap this science is. So for her to back off of that, that's a shame. But, what are you going to do?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, it does damage her credibility with the people that thought that she was, God's gift to climate. So we'll see how that plays out with the numbers that she gets now.
Yeah, but she's been, from what I've seen, she is edging into lukewarmer camp, and that might bring her all the way to our side of the aisle on that issue. Yeah. So who knows?
No need to jump on her. Let's just let her be.
Let her look at it and see the way that, her friends treat her, for stepping out of line. So, yep. All right. Our friend Albert says, Elon recently claimed in 10 years, 90% of electricity on Earth will be from solar. Does he know there's not enough cobalt and copper on Earth for that? I'll pitch it to anybody.
I don't know where that's from. I've never seen that.
I haven't seen it either, but if he said it, he might be banking on the fact that he wants to go in space and mine. So
he'll bring it back from Mars.
Yeah. All these asteroids, they want to be on, they want to do private mining on asteroids. But that's going to take a lot more than 10 years.
I don't know. They've been working on it for what I'm on team. We're going to be mining asteroids. We're going to have not like revenue positive mining of asteroids, but, concept proof of concept mining on asteroids pretty soon here. I think.
I'm convinced you're right about that. I'm just saying, if he said it'll be solar in 10 years, and this guy's asking where we're going to get the copper and the other materials from, you're not going to get it back from asteroids in time to have solar go.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I would point out
just bring Mars back. Thanks, Ed.
I like that. I would point out that Musk has not really deeply invested in creating a solar program for his company. He's got backup system, like these wall battery banks and so forth. But he has not been full on creating a solar panel system that I'm aware of. I think it's because he realizes that it's probably not viable, at least as a business model, because without the all these subsidies that all these other companies were getting and then burned through and crashed, it's not workable. Musk is a smart guy, so I'm pretty sure that quote about solar is either a misinterpretation or just simply made up.
It's attribution.
Yeah, possibly. But not everybody has the time to be an expert on everything, so who knows?
Yeah. He's not-
Okay. This is from someone who I don't think I've seen their comments before. This is from Bija Kasai. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Okay. Does wind work on smaller scale, like for a single building?
Yes, when the wind blows.
Yeah, I see a lot of people doing off-grid stuff with solar. I don't think I've ever seen someone do independent off-grid wind.
I've
Not
seen that.
to say that it doesn't exist. You've seen it? Yeah, I haven't seen it. So
I've seen some small wind. And of course, in Texas and a lot of western U.S., wind has been used to pump water for a century or more.
yeah.
So there are small scale uses. I've seen small turbines, and used in conjunction with solar panels. Off-grid uses, but even they, the places I've seen that have those, they usually have backup diesel generators or not natural gas because of gas pipeline, unless they've got a propane tank. They've got backup generators of some type that run on some form of fossil fuel.
Yeah, and as with all renewables, it's location specific. If I was to live, in Idaho or something, I think you'd probably want off-grid geothermal or something instead. But, if you live in West Texas, wind and solar probably work pretty well for off-grid with a backup. Okay, this is from Walter, who says, per Linnea's video about diminishing temperature effects of CO2's increasing concentration, how does Michael Mann and his band of climatistas respond to this data? Anthony?
Well, he pretty much ignores it because it's contrary to his belief system. He has always portrayed carbon dioxide as being a linear relationship. I don't think he's ever used the word logarithmic in context of carbon dioxide ever. He simply believes that we're on a path to hell in a handbasket, with carbon dioxide, and that's the end of the story. And he doesn't want to look at anything else. And this is evidenced by the fact that he is the blocker in chief when he was on Twitter. And of course, people kept throwing things at him, and so he couldn't block everyone. So he moved off to that blue skies thing, whatever they call it, that other platform, and now he's essentially become invisible. So yeah, he doesn't care. He doesn't want to look at that. It's against his mission. It's against his religion.
Yep. It's a do you know, Anthony, if they incorporate this, mathematical truth into any of the models? I probably not all of them, but some of them surely have to be using this type of a relationship.
Well, if you look at RCP 8.5, you can say for sure that they don't do it properly because that thing is off the charts. In fact, RCP 8.5, that model, is so unrealistic that there's not enough fossil fuels on Earth that we could burn to get to the scenarios that are put out there by RCP 8.5. And a climate alarmist type person who's got some sense, Zeke Housefather, published on this. So, the climate models probably don't properly deal with all of this.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let's see. Sterling mentioned a question, but I cannot find it.
It's from Napier.
Yeah.
He asked, what's the next step with the case? And so it was a state lawsuit in North Dakota. They can appeal to appeals courts in North Dakota. Then they can go to the Supreme Court of North Dakota. and likely, well, I don't know if they'll lose at the Supreme Court, but then if they lose in state court, they might try and have it removed to federal court. They tried that earlier. They did not succeed, but it doesn't mean they won't succeed after it's been finally determined in state court. We don't know, but that's the path.
Yeah, you can be sure they're going to appeal until the cows come home.
Oh, they've already said that.
Yeah, they have to. Thank you, Sterling. Alrighty. This is just a random question from K18 who says, why is Linnea's cat blacked out? Because I lost the patch that I normally have here, but I wore the hat anyway. Well, yeah, it's not cute, but I'm wearing it.
Or at least that's the story we're telling you.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe the patch that I usually wear is something very offensive. No, it's just like a little grayed out American flag and I can't find it. All right.
She's replacing it with a
Jeffrey.
Canadian flag. You know, she's waiting and it's on order from Amazon. She's going to put a Canadian flag on it.
No, I'm going to put the Martian flag on because as our commenters were saying earlier, Mars is ours. It belongs to us. And when we design that flag, it will be the biggest, most beautiful flag that America has ever planted on a foreign
Make
body,
Mars America.
body. Yeah. All right. Jeffrey says, question for Anthony Watts. January 2025 was the coldest January since 1988. Does this mean there is possibly global cooling and not warming?
No. And I'll say why. And I've said this hundreds, if not thousands of times. Weather is not climate. And this basically is due to a series of weather events that happened in January. And so, yes, we had a very, very cold January, and that's not under dispute, but it's not a signature for any kind of climate change. You can't take any single month and say, this is climate change, unless it's warming, in which case, absolutely, it's climate change, right?
Yeah, well, unless they can say that the cold month is actually because global warming is causing polar vortex, right?
Yeah.
Well, if the cooling
The
starts,
spin is incredible.
if the cooling is indicative of the start of a long-term trend, then you might say, "Oh, look, that's the time when the global cooling started." But right now, you can't say that with one isolated month. You cannot attribute the cold to global cooling. Though I'm sure there'll be some attribution study out there saying that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. This is from Riss Reed, who says, any updates on reversing the endangerment finding? Well, I mean, we've heard some stuff in the background, but nothing solid yet. Okay. We're hoping, we're very hopeful that this will be moving down the pike here, but not yet.
What I've heard is they've got to get they've got to get their scientific committees established first and stocked, so they can then do a re-examination of the science. And they haven't done that yet. It takes time. So they're taking, I believe they're taking submissions for resumes and things right now. And so and then once they do it, if they get, if the whatever committee concludes it's not a danger, that'll go to the politicos. They will have to write a new rule or a rescission of the endangerment finding, explaining why, and that'll go through unfortunately, because of the way this was done, it's done through a normal course of regulations that it's going to have to be rescinded through normal course of regulations, and it doesn't happen quickly. Unfortunately, it's harder. Just like with laws, as hard as it might be to get a law written, it's always harder to get a law withdrawn, because suddenly you have special interest groups that didn't exist before the law. They're now benefiting from the law, who will fight for it. And the same is true for these regulations.
Yep. And that's probably true on a whole bunch of stuff regarding like methane regulations and stuff. It's actually going to be an uphill battle against the likes of like the American Petroleum Institute and stuff when it comes to trying to get methane restrictions withdrawn and also the carbon tax stuff totally out of the conversation. So,
well, I think on the methane things, I think some of those have been withdrawn now, but
yeah,
not because of a regulation, but because a Congressional Review Act, it was in the window within which Congress could review it, and Congress did review it and scrapped it.
yep. So it's going to be incremental, unfortunately. As satisfying as it would be to blow it all up at once, that's not going to happen. So we are moving along, though. Okay. Oh, we already got one from Jeffrey. Oh, he added to the question from before, so never mind. Okay. Here's Michael Johansson, who says, when will SpaceX launch their first electric rocket? That's a good point. That's a very
there's
good
electric
point.
airplanes. Why not electric rockets, right? You bring it down and recharge it, right? Makes perfect sense.
Be pretty tough. I'm still on that Newt Gingrich moon base. I'm on Team Moon base still. We should be launching rockets from the moon, but oh well.
I'm unwilling to get in a so-called electric airplane, much less be sending up electric rockets. Where might they fall?
Those little glider things are kind of cool, though. The tow glider.
The tow glider. They're towed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are great. All right. From Brian, we have, is anyone challenging these efforts to block out our sun, especially with those SO2 balloons?
Yeah,
I mean,
aren't you talking? I think he's talking about this guy that created this project where he's getting funded by launching these, weather balloons up into the stratosphere to release sulfur dioxide, right? And the whole thing, we have a story on it on WWT, and it's just absurd. It's just like the solar roads guys, they went out and raised all this money for solar roads, and of course the whole premise was completely broken from the get-go. And it's the same thing with these sulfur dioxide balloons. The amount of sulfur dioxide it's going to be able to put up into the atmosphere is just inconsequential to the whole Earth's energy budget. It's a scam, nothing more than that to get money. That's all.
Yeah, I would say people way, way, way underestimate the volume of our atmosphere. It would take an impossible amount of SO2 to have any kind of measurable effect. So same with the chalk dust thing. I really wouldn't be worried about that. I mean, it's goofy. Bill Gates is investing in it. It's got to be some kind of money laundering scam, because they're not going to get anything to scale.
My suggestion would be that, or my suspicion would be that a lot of the money for this stuff is dried up since November.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be my guess too. All right. Robert Reed says, how do all these Greenpeace protesters get around? Bicycles and a delusional dream? Yeah, I'm going to guess that they bust them in, probably not on electric buses.
Yeah, they are definitely the delusional dream team.
Not in the middle of North Dakota. They didn't come in on electric buses, I guarantee you.
Yeah, I know. Not in the winter also. Make it even worse. Okay, our friend Chris says, perhaps, I just wanted to highlight this comment because it was funny. Perhaps man can pay the Greenpeace costs out of his libel winnings. Yeah, fat chance.
Yeah, that'll make a dent.
Yeah, now $5,000 down from $1 million too. Very nice. All right. Steve Langdon says, Greenpeace, a complete scam that is, oh, we already saw this one. Frank Kabluna says, Trump wants to unleash energy. Will we soon see more coal and gas-powered electricity produced with regulations relaxed?
I would say yes, because we just sent out a press release from Heartland talking about that very thing, where Trump says, you know what? It's open. Coal. Let's go for it. Let's build power plants. He's working on deregulating all of that. And so he wants clean coal, coal plants that are basically scrubbing what's coming out.
I'm not convinced that that's what he meant by clean coal. I think he thinks most coal plants are clean enough already, that our air is that what they put out is already clean. I don't think he's talking about carbon capture and storage when he says clean coal. Um, the limit, the main limit to bringing back coal like it was is a couple of fold. First, the utilities are in on the grift, right? They're making money when they build new construction, cost plus 10% or more, typically. Reopening an old coal plant that they paid off decades ago, it's not going to make them a lot of money. So the government has to have a partner in this. Some of those coal plants have already been destroyed because they feared they come back and say, "Oh, you got to reopen this thing because your wind and solar is not making sense." So they went in and they knocked them down. They pulled out the boilers. They ripped up the railroad tracks that came in and delivering coal, but not all of them. And the ones that they haven't, like Four Corners, they may get reopened because the federal government was actually a partner in Four Corners. Huge coal plant, benefit the Navajo people. They mine it and then they ship it and they burn it on their own reservation. So that would be good. Some of the coal plants can come back, especially if, as Anthony said, you get rid of the ever stricter regulations on mercury emissions and SO2 and NOx that were unnecessary for health in the first place, going from parts per million to parts per billion to parts per trillion. And secondly, if you end the support for transmission and solar and wind, and by transmission, I mean transmission to carry solar and wind. If you can't build the transmission lines, and if you're no longer getting the production tax credit for solar and wind, you're no longer getting the support, the mandates, coal is the option to keep America powered. But you have to do that.
You're muted, Linnea.
You're muted.
Got me. Okay. Did anyone else want to comment on this one?
Oh, yeah, there's the press release. There's quotes
Yeah.
in there from myself and from Sterling, and also from our president, James Taylor. And I post this on What's Up With That. And I want to point out this power plant picture that I took a few years ago. This was the Miami Fort generating station near Cincinnati, Ohio. And you look at all that stuff coming out of those stacks. That is not smoke. That's not carbon, soot or anything like that. This is a clean coal plant, and what's coming out of there is water vapor and steam. And yet the environmentalists want to shut these down, and that's the big problem. These things aren't as polluting as they would like you to believe.
Oh,
Yep.
You said it's water vapor. That's a greenhouse gas, Anthony. They're killing you.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
Busted.
Great. And it's the most powerful one too. Now we're in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bill Napier asks, why are IPCC COPs held annually? Since climate change models are based on 30-year horizons, why not have COP every 5 years? Could the U.S. administration make this recommendation?
Do you think
That's a good
bureaucrats only want to eat big on other people's expenses every 5 years?
Bill, you're ruining their yearly vacation.
Yeah, well, what are you thinking? Man, you're cruel.
It's hard to make that suggestion when you don't show up, which is what we're not going to do for the next 4 years. So
Exactly.
Yep. Alrighty.
If you really want them to meet every year, we have this thing called the internet, and we have these things called live streams. There's no reason they have to fly into countries at great expense, emitting a lot of CO2, and drive people, tear up new virgin parts of the rainforest in Brazil to build roads to ship people to a town, a city in the jungle. You can do it all online. That's not what they want to do.
All right. We've got 3 more questions. I'm going to try and get to them quick. This is from Over Under Above, who says, what's the score with rainfall? Subjectively, it feels here in the UK less. Could clean air have reduced nucleation particles and reduced cloud cover so there's a lower albedo? I'm going to hand that to you, Anthony. Oh, you're muted.
you're muted too.
Ha,
All right.
we all get one.
Sorry, I'm a mutant. Anyway, there are some studies that say, yes, the loss of nuclei has contributed to the lack of rainfall. And so, yeah, that could be very well happening. But I don't do anything based on feel. Show me the data.
Yeah, most of the data that we have seen seems to suggest that precipitation has modestly increased over the middle northern latitudes. Not sure if I mean, it's obviously that's an average once again, so it's not going to be consistent everywhere. It's not like all of the middle latitudes are experiencing the same increase in precipitation. So, some areas will be more, some areas will be less. You might even have an opposite trend in others. It's again part of the problem with taking global averages, right? Or even huge regional averages. Yep. So Mike O says, do you think Michael Mann really knows the facts and just wants to make money by lying?
I don't think he knows that he's lying. I don't think he has that ability to perceive himself that way.
I was at a conference with Michael Mann, and I just think that it's not a matter of science for him. It's a matter of faith. And it's hard to challenge a person's faith. Ask any religious zealot. Mann told me that for him to be wrong about climate change, all of physics would have to be overturned. I said,
all of physics?
Yeah, I said, that's what I said. All of physics? You mean the laws of conservation of energy and thermodynamics and all of that has to go? He says, yes. Everything I ever learned in school about physics and everything I've ever studied since then would have to be overturned for me to be wrong about climate change. That doesn't sound like a person he's immune to facts. It's not a matter of does he just not know the facts? He's immune to facts because it is faith.
Yep. Thank you very much. All right. Last question. Okay. Kevin says, folks, I know it is a far stretch, but is there any chance that our AC electric grid has any effect at all on the earth in any way? I think he means, just signal generally. Right?
I would say this. The only effect that it really has is that we have waste energy that's being released as heat. When electricity gets sent somewhere to a town or a city and it gets used, it turns into heat. And so that warms up the cities, which in turn warms up the thermometers, which in turn shows up as climate change. And that's about all I have to say about it.
I mean, and I don't know about impacting the earth, but we know that, kind of like loose EMF can give you migraines. It can be bothersome to you if it operates at the right signal and stuff. So I guess that, but I don't think it's changing the weather, if that's what you're asking. Well, I think that's all we've got.
Yep, that's all we got for today. Thank you so much for all those questions. I want to thank everybody who was watching us live on Rumble, on X, and on YouTube. We had more than 2,500 of you tuning in today, and that's fantastic. But we need more. Please help spread the word about this show. Also, always visit our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and the CO2 Coalition. Visit climaterealism.com. That's a website by the Heartland Institute. Visit climateataglance.com. That's another website by the Heartland Institute. And also visit, of course, heartland.org, where you can subscribe to the Climate Change Weekly newsletter put out every week by one H. Sterling Burnett, PhD. I want to thank Sterling. I want to thank Anthony. I want to thank Linnea and all of you for tuning in for this week. And we will see you again next Friday. Bye-bye.